Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror, the podcast. My name is Kevin L. Powers. I'm also the owner and operator of Something Wicked Entertainment and Events, and welcome to our podcast today. It is a glorious month here as we were trying to celebrate some of the good things that come out of horror films. If you've been following our podcast, we've been doing a lot of specialty episodes for the last couple months. But this month that we're doing this episode is kind of even more special because we are focusing on franchises, horror franchises. This is going to be part of our franchise recordings that will be released. We're going to hope to release all of them in the same day to really make you have to listen to a lot of podcasts in the same day. And the film we're doing today is Poltergeist, the original Poltergeist by director Tobe Hooper. And to speak about this movie today with me is the amazing Jim Adams, who...
Whoa.
Thank you, Jim.
So amazing, yeah.
We like to have Jim here because he's one of our classic guest host. He loves those classic movies, so it's always fun to get him to come in here and discuss films that he may or may not have ever talked about on his own podcast.
This one I have, but yeah, because they had an anniversary not too long ago. So
I'm trying to think of what the anniversary is. I can't remember what year this came out in.
Let's see. This one came out in I think, was it 75?
I think it was the 80s
or 85.
It might be the 85. I just don't remember.
This is terrible. I have 82. I'm sorry.
82. So, yeah. So this movie is 40 plus years old.
Right. Yeah. 43 years old this year.
So that's actually really amazing that we're talking about this because we kind of talk about a lot of 80s movies because on the show there are a lot of us who love the 80s movies, but sometimes we forget how old they actually are compared to.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I mean, yeah, because I've even done a few 80s films on my podcast, which talks about my growing up and all that stuff. It's like, oh, wow, wait a minute. You mean 40 years? I was an adult when I watched that movie for the first time. Oh, my God. So, yeah.
Well, just so that you know, because I don't know how you came about this, but just to kind of briefly tell you about how I came across this.
Yeah.
I don't actually remember when I first saw this film.
Oh, wow.
I know that as a kid, I had seen this film and I was terrified of it. This one, it was not like my other favorite film, like Gremlins, which has a very dark tone as well. Like
Right,
it's a
right.
very dark tone. For this one, they had those couple sequences that terrified me. You know, the whole thing about the clown doll and the pool
yeah.
at the end filled with the graves.
Right.
The graves, and then of course the man who peels his face off. I always hated that. Like, dude, I always had my.
Those are scary scenes. I mean, they were. I was in the movie theater watching that one. I went to see this when it first opened, and it scared the folks in the audience. Those were very frightening scenes.
They were, and when I rewatched the movie for the podcast, I kind of realized that those scenes sometimes don't always fit with the tone of the film. Because the tone of I like Steven Spielberg film. It's very, very family oriented. Very, you get these great scenes.
Absolutely,
with the family, and then you got these moments where it seems like it just goes a little too far in the horror realm. Because this wasn't rated R. They didn't have rated R back then, but it wasn't.
Well, no, actually, it originally got an R rating when Tobe Hooper and Spielberg appealed it and they won, and they ended up getting a PG rating out of it.
Yeah, isn't that something? This definitely would not be PG in today's world.
It'd be PG-13. I mean, it would have been PG-13 back then if they'd had it, but this was just slightly ahead of Gremlins and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom when they said, "Hey, we need something in between PG and R." So.
Yeah.
Because I think Gremlins came out not too far after this one.
No. I saw Gremlins at the theater when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I did not see this one in 82. I would have been like 6 years old. 6 or 7 years old when this movie came out. Would not have seen this one. I either saw this after the second movie come out.
Right. Okay.
or I saw the first two sometime between the second and third film. Poltergeist was a film I've seen as a kid, but it wasn't one of those films that I always watched a lot.
Yeah, you might have seen it either on cable or VHS because it was pretty quick to come out on VHS after it made its runs. Yeah, it made a couple of runs in the theater, and then.
Okay, so what was your impressions of this film when you first saw it?
I absolutely loved it. I think it was one of the most entertaining ghost stories that I'd ever seen, and I'm really into ghost movies, and it's still one of my all-time favorites as far as leading into this film. Growing up, I was a huge fan of 13 Ghosts, the original one, the William Castle one, and The Uninvited, the one from the way back, in was
I know,
late 40s, early 50s. And then a lot of the ghost movies that had come out after that, they're like The Other and some other The Haunting and stuff like that. I loved. So this one, I just was so entertained by it. I absolutely walked out of the theater feeling really charged up watching it. It's interesting. A lot of people. And I think that the buzz had gone around a little bit that, well, maybe Tobe Hooper didn't really direct it, that Steven Spielberg really directed it. And, everybody knows the story about that Universal wouldn't release Spielberg and allow him to direct a film because he was working on E.T., the extraterrestrial, at the same time. And they both came out within a couple of months of each other. But no, I think from everything I've read, Tobe Hooper did direct this film, but as you were saying a moment ago, you can see the Spielberg influence in the whole suburbia background, and that's like right out of the Spielberg book. But then you get into the scary scenes, and that's all Tobe Hooper. You can tell that's his all the way.
So you bring up a good point. Like I only know. So this is my impressions of after I rewatched it. Having seen this movie as a kid, I had not really watched it again in maybe like the last decade or two.
Oh wow, yeah.
It's been a while since I've seen Poltergeist. I don't even think I watched it before they did the remake. I literally just watched the remake and was going by what I'd seen when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But as I'm rewatching it, and I made notice this, is like the opening shot of this film is definitely very Spielberg heavy because you see suburbia and you see these big, huge shots of the old school suburbia, and you have the one friend who's riding his bicycle down the road with a pack of either beers or Coke. I don't know if I got a clear enough picture. I would assume it's beer because it's a football game he's going to go watch, but you never can tell.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, no, I think it was beer too.
Yeah, but you do see all these kids. They make him almost crash his bicycle. And of course, you see the whole sequence in the house. It's a whole family thing. So this whole family thing is what you see there. Now, that being said, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the film actually opens with the dog and the TV. And the first shot in the house, when you see the dog, the dog is roaming from room to room. You see each of the characters. You get a great sense of the space of the house because the house becomes a main character in the entire film.
It is a character, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And then you cut to all of these characters awake, and you see them on a normal Saturday or Sunday afternoon watching football,
Yeah.
And that all feels to me like a Spielberg film.
Oh, it does. Yeah, no, it's got Spielberg written all over it. Compare it to what he was doing with E.T., and there's the setting there. Yeah, they're almost carbon copies of one another.
Yeah, and I don't discount the fact that I guarantee you Steven Spielberg, because he wrote this, I believe. He
did. He was one of the writers. Yeah.
He was on set to kind of safeguard his baby with a director.
Oh, he was. Yeah. I mean, even Tobe admitted that, and he said, he allowed Steven to make a lot of suggestions, and some of the cast and crew members sort of backed Tobe up on this and said, no, Tobe was our director, but occasionally, when he would stop and try to think about something, Spielberg might, you know, if it was taking him a minute to think about it, Spielberg might jump and say, "Hey, we could try this."
Yeah.
And Toby a lot of times would say, "Yeah, okay, we could do." I mean, they collaborated very well on the movie.
I believe so as well, and I believe that that's what makes this film a much more timeless type of film than
Absolutely.
with Poltergeist 2 or 3.
Well, the thing I really like too, and I think what Toby Hooper does, and I'm going to pay him a lot of credit on this film, and this is where I get into some big disagreements with some of my buddies who say, "Oh no, this was all Spielberg," and I mean even one of my regular co-hosts argues with me this all the time. But I say, no, I think what Toby Hooper did, I think he utilized that to his advantage. And you pointed out how different the scary sequences were from the suburban sequences. How one was almost like out of a situation comedy, family type movie, and then the scary ones are just like, you know, flat out scary. Mm-hmm. And I think Toby used that dichotomy to make this film very powerful.
I agree with you.
You got people like regular everyday Joes, and then all of a sudden they're going through this crap, this supernatural crap that they're going through, and it's almost like, hey, that can happen to you. And I think it makes a very scary movie for folks.
Well, it does, and you bring up another good point. Like the neighbor character, I can't remember what the neighbor's name, but that.
Oh, I mean, I've got a note on that, and what is his name? Tuthill.
Okay, so Tatil, I guess is his name is.
I think I got it right.
Time he shows up, they're having this little battle between the remotes.
Yeah. Michael McManus is the character actor that plays him. He's in everything.
It's so great because I didn't remember that his character came back several times in the movie.
Yes, he does.
Until I rewatched it, I was like, oh, this is great to see this kind of.
Yeah, there's a lot of interaction between the two houses.
Yeah, I mean, it's in that one, and then the next scene that they're in, you know, him and was it Steve and Diana?
Go
over there to see if they're experiencing anything weird after.
Yes.
And they're getting eaten up by mosquitoes, and I don't get eaten up by mosquitoes. I've never been eaten up by mosquitoes.
Right.
And those scenes are so hilarious. That you don't really think that would be like a Toby Hooper thing, but I think it was a great balance in this film.
I do too.
The horror and the comedy and the drama, and then of course they come back at the very end, which I didn't realize this until I rewatched it, and they help Diana out of the pool after she's been assaulted by.
Yes, that's a big scene. That's when you get to meet the wife. I don't think you've seen his wife.
You don't see her before then. I'm like, oh, it knows that in having not seen this movie,
because the gal that played her is virtually unknown. I found like virtually nothing on her, as far as she might have been a friend of Toby Hooper's or a friend of Steven Spielberg's for all I know. Or it was Virginia Kaiser was the name of the actress, but I couldn't find really any information on her at all. Much at all.
Probably not, but those little tidbits like that are what makes the movie seem more down to earth.
Yes.
It makes the entire family seem much more realistic.
Yeah.
And it's something I hate to say this, is lacking in the second and third film. And that's why I think this film holds up so.
Oh, yeah. When we get into those movies. Yeah. This is true. Yeah. Oh, man.
Well, that's what makes this one hold up so well. When I
agree.
Watched it, I was like, oh, wow. This is. Because I've always enjoyed this film. I've always enjoyed Poltergeist.
It's very entertaining. Like I said, it's one of the most entertaining ghost stories I've ever watched.
But because it's a ghost story, and I didn't really care for. I've only seen the second one maybe 3 times. I've seen the third one like maybe 10. I don't know why that is. I never rewatched the second one very much.
I didn't either. And we're getting ready. We're going to be talking about it on another episode, and it was probably the first time I'd seen it in 20 some years. So.
It was really interesting rewatching these movies, and I could see why I did not like. This was not always like a constant watch for me in the 80s and 90s. Like, there's a lot of other 80s movies, and there's definitely worse Toby Hooper movies that I watched more than I ever watched this one. And I frankly have always thought this was one of his best films.
I do too. I think this is a very good film from him.
But I can guarantee you that I could say that I've seen Life Force more times than I've ever seen this movie.
Yeah, I would have to admit to that as well.
And that's not a very good movie. It's a fun movie.
Yeah, it's got some fun scenes in it. That yeah, it's there's one particular person I like watching in that movie, but you know, other than,
But
yeah, I've got to confess to that.
yeah, so I don't know. So when I was rewatching it, it boggles my mind why this was a film I just never watched a whole lot, but was always in the back of my mind as being a great movie. It's kind of weird. I don't know if you had that same impression or not, but when I was,
I had it on VHS. I'd pull it out now and then just for some fun if there was nothing around really that I wanted to watch. So you know, I'd probably over span of, you know, the 30 years or so that it had been out or whatever, maybe watched it, you know, 6 or 7 times, something like that.
Oh, I mean, I can guarantee I probably seen it about 15 times when I was a kid. But as an adult, I this is the first time I've critically watched the film. As a younger kid and a young adult, I can guarantee you I was not ever watching this film for any critical type thing like I was doing when I was recently watching it.
Right.
There's just a lot of things in this movie that unsettled me, and I kept going back and rewatching it. Now, the one scene that I always didn't care for, I had to say, the early CGI scene. I never really cared for this scene, and when I rewatched it, I still never cared for it. Is the first time when the investigators go into Carol Ann and Robbie's room, and all the stuff is flying around.
Yeah,
it all looks pretty freaking bad in my opinion. It looked bad when I was a kid, but it looked even worse now.
I think the humor behind the humorous setup to that helped me get over it. Of course, then again, for the day, it wasn't bad. I mean, but you could tell, but you knew it was CGI. I mean, it was
early, whatever they used,
very early animation. But
yeah.
But the whole setup of, you know, these guys show up to investigate the strange goings on, and the guy goes, yeah, you know, I had a car move 10 feet, like, or 2 feet in 10 hours or something like that. And you've got Steve going, uh-huh. And they go up to the bedroom and he opens it up and all this crap's flying around. And it's like, oh, we're just dying laughing in the theater. It's like, it's so hilarious to see this guy going, oh my God, you know, yeah, so 2 feet in 10 hours. Yeah, that's really good. Check this out.
So you bring up my next thing I wanted to make sure I talked about with it, which is kind of like the paranormal investigator / scientific aspect of this film. Because
it's based on a real group of people.
Is it?
Believe it or not. And I only know this because I spent time living in Durham, North Carolina. You know, after I'd gotten out of school in Chapel Hill, and I moved to Durham a few years later and was working in Durham. And they weren't really affiliated with Duke University, but they were on the campus. It was called the Rhine Institute, and it was a group that studied parapsychology. One of the first to ever do it. You know, and if you're a fan of the old Ghost Hunter show and some of them will make reference to it because they're the guys that got it all started, where they actually brought science into investigating strange activities and things of that nature. But yeah, it was. I got sort of a kick out of it. I said, yeah, I wonder if those people are affiliated with the Rhine Institute. And then in one of my film books a couple of years later, it was like, oh yeah, that's who they based it on. That's who Spielberg got the idea for. He wrote most of the script for this, or the general idea came from Spielberg. And then he had a couple of guys come in and help him write it over a period of several months or whatever. But basically, this is Stephen's story. And he had heard of the Rhine Institute and said, yeah, okay, that's where we're getting our parapsychologists from. I don't even think they had a term for it back then. I forgot when that term actually came into popular use. But
well, this was the 80s, so who I would think.
I would say sometime after this movie came out, not too far after this movie came out. But yeah, you didn't think much. You know, there was Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they were about the only ones that I had ever heard of before this actually went out and investigated things of this nature. So.
You know, that's a good. Yeah, that's about to say that's a good reference because you're right. I don't think there was a whole bunch of people
No,
who did
they were
that.
the most famous I was aware of. I'd read a couple of books about them, and was always fascinated with that, the whole concept of bringing out scientists to invest, or a scientific type approach to. Even though Ed and Lorraine brought sort of a spiritual approach to it too, but I mean, just to even study it, because people just they didn't talk much about it. But I grew up in a family where my mother's father, my grandfather on my mother's side, was real into parapsychology.
Really?
He's the one that really, I had seen a couple of scary movies about ghosts and stuff, but he's the one that really got me interested, because he says, no, this is real. This is real stuff. He had books with pictures in it of some of the classic ghost tales from the late 1800s and early 1900s, and things that were unexplained and stuff. And so then I really started looking for that stuff, looking for books about all of that stuff. And so, yeah, it set me up for movies like this. I just got it. I thought they presented these guys really well.
I think that was what sells this movie so well, is that even in this day and age, what is presented by these investigators seems authentic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is the kind of thing, that they were doing. Yeah.
And I think that's what holds this. One of my things is, like I say, this is almost like a timeless film, but the way it is presented.
Yeah.
And paranormal, like these paranormal investigators aren't sensationalizing this like you would see in like Ghost Hunters.
No.
This is a very like scientific research, scientific based. We're going to get to the truth. And they don't bring in someone until I forget when Zelda Rubinstein's Tangerine.
Yeah, I mean it's a little more than halfway through the film. I mean, she's near the end of the film.
Yeah, she comes in after what they've investigated has been exhausted. And one of them refuses to come back.
Right.
I had forgotten that happened until I rewatched. I was like, "Oh yeah, that's right."
Oh yeah,
it doesn't come back.
They were gonna bring that character back into the second one, which we're going to talk about some other time. But he was unavailable. He had a conflict, so they didn't write that character into the second script. So. But yeah, I'm going. I'm leaving. I'm not coming back.
Well,
after he had the incident with the food in the kitchen.
Well, the thing is, it's so weird because when I rewatched this, now I never saw this parallel growing up, but when I was rewatching this, I kind of got the impression of the format of this film almost following the format of what happens in The Exorcist, where you have to exhaust.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Yeah,
you have to exhaust all of the scientific means before you get to the religious aspects / spiritual aspects from this. And then it is only at the very end when Father Marin shows up, and in this one, it's Zelda Rubinstein's Tangerine doesn't show up towards the end.
I hadn't really made that connection, but I can see it.
I never did either.
Yeah, I mean I got a feeling Spielberg might have been heavily influenced by The Exorcist.
And everything was they try to base it on science as much as possible.
Oh yeah,
a sense of realism that wouldn't have been in there if they had gone the more sensationalistic route.
Right. Well, I mean, and you look, the scientific aspects of this, these television shows that are on, and I'm a fan of Ghost Hunters and had a chance to meet several of them at conventions and things and all that. I mean, the equipment that they use is pretty much the kind of equipment that the actual scientists used in these early parapsychological investigations, the EMP readings and all of that sort of thing. So yeah.
So we talked a lot about the story aspects of this film and everything else. Well, I'll talk about the plot. For everyone listening, we haven't gone through the plot of Poltergeist because we all think you have seen this movie.
Probably have, but if not, we're going to spoil it. So be warned.
If you haven't seen the Poltergeist, then there's some issues.
I was going to say, what's wrong with you?
This is a show.
Why are you even listening to this podcast if you haven't?
And it's like there's 4 of these movies, so you should have seen the first.
That's right.
But I do want to talk about the actors for this. Now,
Absolutely, it's a great cast.
Yeah, the thing is, this was before Craig T. Nelson did Coach and the other shows.
Oh God, yes, yes.
A more popular television dad type of character, and then of course JoBeth Williams.
Of course, I knew him from the return. Let's see, from the Return to Count Yorga. So I remember that. I mean, and he popped up in some stuff here and there. So I sort of knew who he was.
Yeah, I didn't know who any of these people, other than unfortunately Heather O'Rourke, because of her passing during the making of the third film.
Man, that is tragic.
But I didn't really know who any of these actors were from this.
No, the others, were relatively. I don't think I'd seen JoBeth Williams in anything that I can. Well, I did. No, I did see her in Kramer versus Kramer. She had a pretty good supporting role in that as Dustin Hoffman's girlfriend.
Yeah,
but she may have been the only. I'm trying to think of Beatrice Straight. I don't know if I really remember her from some of her earlier work, but she may have been the most veteran actress in this whole movie. She'd been working for quite a long time. I mean, she had won an Academy Award and Tony Awards and stuff like that, so she was pretty well known.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is the cast for this is amazing, and they sell this paranormal film really well.
Yes.
Unlike now, where we are inundated with a billion paranormal type films all the time.
Yeah.
This was kind of a novelty back in the early 80s.
Oh, yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot of films like this. And even if there were, they didn't try to be very scientific in the explanation of it all.
No, right. It's true. It's true.
Like, the brilliance of this movie is the script, because it gives you these little tidbits about everything before the big reveal at the end. Like,
yes,
you get the little tidbits about with the big reveal at the end, with them being on a graveyard.
Well, and it kills me because they almost give it to you right in the beginning of the movie. And you know, I'm one of those that pride myself on being able to figure things out. And I remember sitting in the theater, and it came at the end. It was like, oh my God, they built this thing on a graveyard. I didn't even see. I should have seen that coming a mile away. But you forget about it. You forget about that little tidbit of information.
I mean,
where the boss played by James Karen.
Loved him.
One of my favorites.
Yeah.
Takes Steve up to a new site and says, yeah, but there's a graveyard here. He says, yeah, we're going to move it. He says, good. He says, yeah, we did it down at your place.
Yep.
There's no problem. We get permission, and we just dig them all up and move them. Not.
Well, that's the great thing about this film is those type of. It's like there's nothing wasted in this movie.
No, not at all. Not at all.
One of those films where when you rewatch it, not probably on the first watch, but on definitely rewatches, you pick up on the fact that this Steven Spielberg in these earlier films that he wrote and he produced and kind of spearheaded was really good at storytelling.
Oh yes, he's a very good storyteller.
And even if he created the story and created the script, he could hand it off to someone and it still feel like a Spielberg production.
Yeah.
But yet had those little tidbits that are definitely Tobe Hooper.
Yeah. Of course, they couldn't make this movie exactly like they made it back then today.
No.
Not with the TV scenes, because TV never goes off.
It never goes off. Yes,
I'm sure there's people going, "What the heck was this with the flag and the Star Spangled Banner?" Is that believe it or not, children, TV did go off during a point in my lifetime. You couldn't see anything on TV between 1 o'clock and maybe 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever. It's like, oh my God, that's horrible.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. I picked up on that when I was rewatching. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that.
That's right. Yeah,
we all grew up with we grew up with that aspect of television. It did go off. It went just nothing at a certain time of night.
Once Ted Turner hit the scene with CNN and stuff like that, all of a sudden everybody was on 24 hours a day.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Yeah. Well, when we get around to the remake, I have to watch that more critically and closely. I didn't really do that when I saw it in the theater. The only time I saw the remake, so I don't know exactly how they approached everything anymore. That'll be an interesting one.
It's been a while. I saw it when it first came out, and I remember. I mean, my impression was I liked it. because I went in there thinking, they're never going to be. It's never going to be as good as because these remakes I'm really tough on anyway. Because it's like the thing that made like a film like this a classic. You're never going to be able to encapsulate that again. No matter what you're trying to do, you're going to have to come up with a different hook or something. But unfortunately, on the remake, I don't remember a lot of details about it. So apparently it didn't bother me, but it didn't really stand out either.
It didn't, and I don't remember anything about it either, which is why when I rewatch it'll be interesting.
Yeah,
I remember that they just flip-flopped a lot of incidences between the children.
Right.
And I had forgotten when I rewatched the original that both children get sent away at a certain
That's right.
All three children actually eventually go
Yeah.
for like
For a period of time. That's right.
Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, I guess they do go away.
They go live with their grandmother.
Yeah. Which I had forgotten.
Who we will meet in the second one.
Oh, yes. So I found that very interesting. And the thing is, it makes, I don't know what it does with the film, but it makes it more personal when it becomes just the two parents and the daughter who's trapped.
Yeah.
The reasons why she's trapped in this other world, it is when they start revealing why everything's happening, it's kind of it got that personal heartstrings type thing that
oh yeah, and I think and if I ever get a chance to meet Steven Spielberg, I'll ask him this, and I think I know how he's going to answer it. He had to have been influenced by a particular episode of The Twilight Zone, and everybody knows it. It's about the little girl who falls out of bed and falls into another dimension, and it's called Little Girl Lost. And the parents hear the girl fall out of bed or whatever and hear her crying, and they go running in, and she's gone. They can't find her, but they can hear her. Her voice is all over the map, and then they bring in a physicist friend of theirs, and she's fallen into this portal that is opened up in her bedroom. And it was such a cool episode back then because we didn't talk about stuff like that.
Oh wow!
But the whole aspect of when Carol Ann is taken away, and but they can hear her voice, but they don't know where she is. They don't know where she's gone, but you can hear her voice all throughout. It's very much like that episode of The Twilight Zone.
Very interesting. I have not seen that episode before.
Little Girl Lost is the name of the episode. Yeah, it's a classic. It's like a lot of it. If you find some old guys like me that grew up on Twilight Zone and say, your favorite episode, that one always tends to come up a lot.
I watched Twilight Zone on syndication, so I never saw anything in order, and I guarantee you I'm not in every episode.
This was one of the earlier ones. It was back when they were only a half an hour long, so it was, but quite a compelling episode. It was one of my favorites. So I think Spielberg definitely that figured into his storytelling. That whole feel of it, and I'm sure if I'm Tobe Hooper, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to go with that because probably Tobe Hooper was very familiar with that episode as well.
So, what do you think are some of the endearing qualities of this film for people to go back and rewatch, despite the fact that no one in this modern day times realizes that television actually didn't run all day long?
The one thing I really liked about this movie, where they got I was at a point where it's like, okay, you got a monster movie or a horror film, whatever you want to, bring it on, because I've seen it all, and this film starts out as sort of this nice family film, and all this cool, weird stuff is going on in this house. Like, I love the scene in the kitchen where Diane, and Carol Ann, who's the youngest little one, the Heather O'Rourke character, see all this weird stuff going on in the kitchen, where like the chairs end up on the table and all that stuff, and the thing where she puts a little football helmet on Carol Ann and says, "Watch this," and she goes sliding across the kitchen floor, all this weird stuff, and I'm thinking, this is pretty cool stuff. and it's sort of light and bouncy and stuff. And all of a sudden, you've got the thunderstorm. One of those, later on, a couple of days later in those evening, where the scary tree, busts into the bedroom of the kids and freaking out Robbie, and that's based, and that part came from something that happened to Steven Spielberg. He grew up and there was a big ugly tree outside his bedroom window he was terrified of. So he was definitely going to put that in the script. But then something takes Carol Ann. Something in the closet, we've all, as kids, the monster in the closet, something got her. And then it takes a real different turn.
Yeah, so it's actually quite funny that you mentioned that, the monster in the closet. The thing that all kids are afraid of, he actually utilizes to a horrifying effect. There was a monster, it took her.
Oh yeah, he used a lot of, and he said he used a lot of things from his childhood. Fear of clowns. He had a fear of clowns, which figures into this movie, in a great way. But I just love that transition where it goes from being, it's a light, bouncy, innocent type film, and all of a sudden, whoa! And this could happen to you. There's nothing this family has done to have earned this. These are good. Salt of the earth people, they're not like trailer trash or nasty people or crooks or anything. So why is this happening to them? And that's the question they start asking throughout the whole second half of the movie. It's like, why is this going on in our life? We haven't done anything. And
it becomes more apparent with the second film when they try to explain why stuff
happens.
I
know. Yeah.
Which is kind of weird. When I rewatched it, that's kind of freaking weird. I liked it better in this first movie where it's a normal family and these abnormal things happen to them for no apparent reason.
Bad things happen to good people.
Bad things happen to good people. To the point that the house that they cherished, that they thought they'd be living in with the white bits and everything, just gets swallowed up and disappears, which I actually still love that whole sequence.
Oh, that's a great sequence. Oh my God, yeah.
I love that sequence.
The house just gets swallowed up by the earth. Yeah, that was unbelievable.
I will say this now, because I never noticed it until I rewatched part 2, Poltergeist to the Other Side, is that it's hilarious that Craig T. Nelson and Steve and Diane are having a conversation about the insurance and the fact that they can't get insurance in the house that just disappeared.
Oh yeah, and the second one, yeah. That's
I can guarantee you that I've never picked up on that ever until I rewatched it, and I was freaking.
I've got to confess, I did not either. That one jumped out at me this time around when I watched it the other day.
I was rolling when I was.
It's not like it's going to come back.
It's not like it's going to come back. And so that makes me feel like that still is one of my favorite sequences.
Now, one thing about this movie that it was a great scene. There, the part of it involves them. They're building a swimming pool at this house of their dreams. And of course, it's Steven's the big real estate guy that works for this company. He's building all these communities. And as we find out that there had been a cemetery and the bodies didn't really get moved, and Diane falls into the waterlogged hole that's going to be the swimming pool, and all the bodies come up around her and stuff. That's a really spooky scene. It's a really frightening scene. And then I read later on in one of my film books, they used real corpses for this.
Yes.
Real, and I thought, now I'm getting really creeped out. It's like, oh my God, how can they do that? But and I guess they didn't tell anybody.
Yeah, they used
Joe Beth Williams wasn't aware of it until after the scene was shot, and it was probably wise that they didn't tell him.
Well, my understanding is they used them and then they redressed them up to look rotting and
yes, right.
So it was really funny that they put that in there because, hey, we needed some corpses.
Yeah, and apparently this is something that has been done often in other films as well. So
yeah, yep.
Wow.
But you brought up one of the great sequences, which is one of my favorites. And even though it terrifies me as a kid, I always loved watching that sequence.
Yeah.
which is really crazy considering I couldn't swim back then when I was a kid. I can swim now.
Oh wow.
As an adult, I learned probably about 5 years ago. But
Well, we have that. We have some of that in common. I nearly drowned when I was 4 years old, and I had a fear of water, and it took me a longer time. I grew up on a lake, so my whole family and all my relatives and stuff, they're out there swimming and stuff, and I can't go into water over my head until I was like 12 or 13 years old. It took me a long time to learn how to swim and get over that. So yeah, I was a late bloomer when it came to that.
I waited until I was 40.
Wow, that's waiting a long time. But anyway,
no, but
not judging. No.
Those type of sequences when you're a kid,
that would be scary.
Terrifying.
Yeah,
I was terrified of that scene, but I also really loved it because it always gave me these jump scares that I liked.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This is the thing I will say about this movie that is not like the second one. The second one has all these actual jump scares in it, which bothered me when I rewatched it. This one has genuine scares in it, and it's unsettling.
Yeah, it's all stuff that's very believable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as crazy as it sounds, folks, and we're talking about ghostly and spiritual apparitions, but the things that these people are dealing with is very believable, and how between Spielberg's script and Tobe Hooper's interpretation of it and stuff, he really brings that home.
Yeah, and
I think that's another reason why we're talking about this film 40 plus years later.
Yeah. Because and this is something I noticed on this rewatch that I never noticed as a kid. The sequence where it happens at night, and it's right after the one guy has this little scare in the kitchen, and then he's coming out, and the camera has moved itself to record the ghostly apparition coming down the steps.
Oh yeah.
And it's a very beautiful moment.
It's awesome.
It's a beautiful moment, but when they play back the footage, you see all the different ghosts.
Yes.
You never noticed that until I rewatched it.
Yeah, that is awesome how they shot that.
And I was like, it looked like one big ghost when it was in actuality.
Yes, right.
But when they replay it back, it's a bunch of ghosts. And
Initially, it looked like a woman with a big flowing dress, something out of Gone with the Wind, maybe, or something. But yeah, then when you see it close up, it's like
it's a bunch of different ghosts, and that makes it even creepier.
It really does. Yeah.
Like just saying because and I guess I just went over my head as a kid when Joe Beth Williams' character says, "Where did they all come from?" And because I didn't realize it was more than one ghost till now, and that's a very creepy question to ask. You see all these spirits coming out of here.
You got that right.
Where are they coming from? I was like, this house that you're living in is filled with all these spirits. And that right there, it makes this a very terrifying film because it's like, holy shit.
Yeah, then you realize, there's something more serious going on than these cutesy little events that are occurring, this little playful poltergeist screwing around with you. No, there's something serious going on.
Well, that's also the reason why I think this film is it can stand on its own, and it's a timeless movie, despite the fact that people don't realize the television is used to turn off.
I
think that's one of the reasons why this still holds up so well. It's a really well done film. The actors are really good. They like to say, lots of people like to say that like this film and other films can be marred by subsequent sequels in the franchise, such as the Exorcist sequels or the Jaws sequels. But the Jaws still holds up extremely well. The Exorcist still holds up extremely well.
And the originals, always hold up well.
And this film holds up extremely well. I don't think any of you can watch the sequels if you like, but I think this holds up extremely well.
I think it does. It's very, I enjoy watching it every time I've seen it. I just always get a kick out of it.
So, are there any final words for you regarding Poltergeist, directed by Tobe Hooper?
The one elephant in the room that concerns this movie is the curse of Poltergeist that has made it into all the tabloids and stuff because people died who made this film, which I think, I don't think there's a real curse. as far as this film goes. But I mean, as we mentioned earlier, Heather O'Rourke would die at the age of 12 during the filming of the third one. You've got Dominique Dunn, who we haven't mentioned, who a beautiful little gal, who was playing the older sibling in this, Dana Freeling, who was murdered by her boyfriend less than a year after this film was released.
Yeah.
And, a brutal situation. And then other people who have died making various renditions of this film. But it's like, I think that was more overblown. It was probably some marketer like that says, yeah, a lot of people come watch this movie, if they think there's a curse attached to it or whatever. Because the movie made a ton of money. I mean, it's still making money.
Yes.
Out of all of the Poltergeists, well, I won't say it's the only one that made money because the second one did make money, but this one made more money than any of the other three that were made, and it still continues to make it because you're still, if you're going to get it streaming, you're going to probably pay a couple of bucks for it.
Yeah.
So, but it is such a fun ride. The time goes by very quickly.
It does.
And, what was it, about an hour and 40 minutes, something like that. I'm trying to think. It was not quite 2 hours, but it doesn't feel it. I mean, it was 114 minutes. Yeah, it was right at 2 hours. Mm-hmm. And a great score by Jerry Goldsmith. I love the music in this movie. Everything fit so perfectly in this film. And the music, he would come back and do the music in the next one. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the cinematography by Matthew Leonetti. It's a good-looking film, shot really well. Utilizes a lot of lighting effects and of course, again, a lot of practical effects. Although we do see some early CGI in this, in a couple of those scenes, which it's going to look like animation, folks, but put on your 1982 filter. That was the best they had back then, and it was pretty damn good.
20 plus years ago, yeah.
Yeah, and it still looked pretty good. I mean, it was just, I was still, at the time, I was blown away.
The only sequence, like I said, that bothered me was the one with all the flying toys.
With the bedroom scene, big bedroom scene.
That could be because there's supposed to be toys flying around and you see them actually moving and stuff.
Right.
For a humorous effect. But
but it's a nice balance. They did a beautiful balance between some humorous sequences that worked in the context that they used them in, and it was a nice balance between that and the absolute horror that you see in this movie.
Yeah, which is a testament to Goldsmith's score as well.
Absolutely,
because he one of my favorite composers of all time.
Yes, absolutely. He's ranked right up there in my top 5. Yeah,
but and I have the score, and I have the second score for the second one as well, and they are both amazing scores.
They're both very good. Yeah,
and this one is much more balanced with the tone and the way it is mixing the humor with the horror with the drama. And it goes extreme on all three facets. It can be extremely horrifying in some scenes. It can be extremely dramatic in other scenes, and it can be extremely funny in other scenes. And we've talked about a lot of those scenes already. And
right. And then his music for Carol Ann. Mm-hmm. Even people who haven't seen this movie probably know it's from this movie.
Oh yeah.
Because it's so recognizable.
Oh yeah. I'll agree with you on that one. That being said, I hope that people listening to this, who I'm hoping everyone has seen Poltergeist.
Yeah.
If you have seen Poltergeist, I hope that after listening to our conversation that you decide to rewatch the movie.
Oh yeah.
Give it another chance. Evaluate it with a more clearer eyes. It's
a great it'd make a great Halloween film. Have a Halloween party, show this movie.
Yeah, show this one. This is one that started an enduring franchise that lasted 3 original films. Unfortunately, Heather O'Rourke passed away, or there have been more. And then, of course, you had the remake for modern day audiences. So it'd be kind of interesting to revisit that one, just because we can tell the difference between what the original film was and what people thought the modern day audiences wanted in something like a Poltergeist.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Yes.
Yeah.
That is, yeah.
But we hope that everyone will sit back and listen to all these episodes that have to do with the franchise, so you get a clear idea of the franchise as a whole. Now, the reason why we're doing these episodes is to give people an idea. There's a lot of people out there who may have only seen the first or second film of the franchise and not bothered with subsequent sequels. We're hoping that by doing these type of episodes, where we do an episode for each film in a franchise, you'll get a clear idea of every film in that franchise, and it might prompt you to go out and watch the one you haven't seen and or rewatch the ones you have seen, but with a clearer eye. With that, I want to ask you, Jim, because we do a rating sequel sequence.
That's right. Yeah, you're gonna. Yeah, I forgot about it.
We gotta rate the movie from 1 to 5, 1 being horrible to 5 being excellent. Where on the spectrum do you put Poltergeist?
I very rarely give out a 5, but I will give this one a 4.5. I'll give it right up near almost there. Almost. I think it's a near perfect film, as far as the subject matter.
You know what? I am going to do the same thing because I do think it is by far one of my favorite Tobe Hooper films.
Yes.
And one of my favorite Spielberg produced films. And having rewatched it, I think it's even better than what I remembered it being. Because I can see now.
Yeah. I can't argue that. Can't argue that at all. It does get better with age.
It does. It gets better with age. And I don't think I saw a lot of the stuff when I originally watched this over 20 years ago. The last time I watched it about 20 years ago to now, I think it has aged better. I saw a lot of stuff in this film now that I probably have never seen in the like 10 or 15 other times I saw it. So I do recommend people go out and watch this film. And if you've never seen the sequels, they're varying degrees of quality, but
we'll let you in on those future shows here. Yeah,
we'll let you know about those. But you should check it out. I think the Poltergeist Legacy, because there was a television show too called Poltergeist.
That's true. I forgot about that. That's right. Yeah,
that had no connective tissue to the actual show itself.
No, not at all. No.
Poltergeist Legacy. But it's a franchise that I'm sure will be revisited again because it's something that can be revisited again for modern audiences. With that, I want to thank you, Jim, for joining us on Conversation in Horror while we speak about this franchise favorite of horror films called Poltergeist, directed by Tobe Hooper. For everyone out there, I hope that you are going to follow, subscribe, do that thing you do with your favorite podcast on whatever app that you love.
Leave a comment too. Leave a comment. Those are very, very helpful in getting us spotted out there.
Yes, make sure you leave a comment and make sure to leave a comment that actually has other films that you'd like us to talk about. In our previous episodes, we have done a ton of horror films already, but we want to know what you want us to talk about. So please make sure to leave those comments for us at any our social media sites. With that, I want to thank you for joining us on Conversations in Horror, the podcast. Everyone out there, from all of us here at Something Wicked Entertainment, have a pleasant day, and I will see you on the next episode. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, written, produced, and directed by Kevin L. Powers, executive producer Kelly A. Inoka. All contents and material from this episode of Conversations in Horror is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures.